day, everybody. Thank you so much for being here again. This month is, as you know, this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I am delighted to be speaking with you every week on the topic relationships, research, and realities. In this session, we will talk about the realities of relationship issues, specifically surrounding domestic violence. Our first week, we talked about what domestic violence is and what it might look like in certain circumstances and situations. And I was delighted to have our guests. Last week, we actually talked about domestic violence in the faith community. And I was so thankful to have our guests share their experiences with domestic violence as it relates to domestic violence, building awareness in faith communities and what we need to know. And today, man, we have some powerful guests today. I am so excited and thankful, humbled by the presence of our two guests today, Miss Aisha Thomas and Miss Dietrich Betts. Both of them will share information about domestic violence in the workplace as well as domestic violence in the military. And I segmented them out because sometimes people don't think of the military as a workplace. But we're going to talk about the presence of domestic violence in the workplace as well as the military. As you know, every 15 to 20 seconds, a person is impacted by domestic violence. That means since the time we've been on for 2 minutes, how many people have been impacted by domestic violence? At least 6. In the 2 minutes that we've been on, 1 out of 7, some people say 4, some people say 7 people have been a victim, a survivor, impacted by domestic violence at some point in their lives. And so it is an important issue for us to talk about, specifically during this month of October. So let me just thank Ms. Thomas for being here and Ms. Betts for being here. Thank you all so much. I am so happy that you are here. And I'm just going to start by just asking you if you would just introduce yourselves to our guests. Tell us about who you are, what you do, and your connection to this issue of domestic violence. Who wants to start first? Dietrich, I'll call on you first.
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Dietrich Betts, and I am currently the Executive Director at Haven of the Danville region, located in Danville, Virginia, where we service victims of domestic and sexual assault in the county and the city of Danville. I've been in this domestic violence arena for about 7 years now, and so I'm delighted to be a part of this platform today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Miss Aisha Thomas, please tell us about yourself and don't forget to include your military stuff, please.
Of course. Hello, everyone. Such an honor to be here. But I'm Aisha Thomas. I always say I'm your resident militarypreneur. So I served in the United States Air Force. I've been serving since 2003. So I've been serving for 18 years, where outside of supporting awesome organizations within the joint base Anacostia bowling area where we support the National Capital Region. I serve as a military, I serve within the resiliency component. So I'm an MRT, Master Resiliency Trainer, and I also support where we focus on raising awareness on sexual assault as well as domestic violence and suicide awareness. So this topic is a near and dear topic to my heart from supporting that capacity. And I'm also a domestic violence survivor. So by having that personal experience, how it also impacted me while serving, and now taking my experience in supporting our military members in those critical components, and also supporting leaders in changing policies and being aware, and also those team members that are connected to those individuals who are navigating that. This has been very beneficial in just really changing the view in the workplace and in the military about how to support one another in when their team members are navigating domestic violence related issues. So
wow.
Here.
So now you all understand why I'm thankful that they are both here. These are the experts in this area, and they can speak to domestic violence in the workplace as well as in the military. Aisha, if you don't mind, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, Would you talk about the presence of domestic violence in the military and the workplace? What does it look like? How often does it happen? Is it really an issue?
Yes, definitely. I mean, again, a lot of times, especially for the military, again, you see this, and like you mentioned earlier, you see that that it might be an area that's forgotten, right? The military is this, this side component. You're thinking like they're out. Uh, Serving in wars, and you hear topics related to post-traumatic stress disorder a lot of times in wars, but a lot of people don't recognize the wars that are happening within the home, and domestic violence, sexual violence, interpersonal violence is something that's very common in the Air Force. And when there were opportunities, and the Pentagon has really taken time to ensure that there was a budget and funds were allocated to ensure that the support was given to really focus in on not only raising awareness, but also pivoting towards bystander prevention. Because while awareness was important, it was also supporting, again, team members to pay attention to those warning signs. Because a lot of times we also have to realize that, yes, we wear a uniform, but this is still a societal related issue. This is something that's impacted, workplaces. They say that statistics say 2 million people become victims of workplace violence annually, right? They talk about domestic violence has impacts within productivity, performance, and somebody that has navigated that. Again, it was something that I didn't speak about. I was a high performer. Again, when you're in the military and it's about navigating the mission, and you're mission driven, a lot of times it's one of those things that's pushed behind the scenes, because we're so focused on the mission, the wars, and all these other things. So I think, again, because of the culture and the climate within certain workplaces, a lot of these type of topics are pushed within it's not in the forefront, it's pushed in the back. So again, I'm so grateful to have been a part of those initiatives to really start raising awareness and really focus on bystander prevention, so we can also provide people the tools of how to raise awareness and also say something in some type of way in case they do notice that a team member is navigating that. But it is common, it does happen. And just because someone wears the uniform does not mean that they can't be a victim or someone that is a perpetrator of domestic violence.
Thank you so much. Dietrich, what does it look like? What does workplace what does domestic violence look like in the workplace for those who come to you for help? What are some of the challenges that people who are victims navigate? What are some of those challenges?
So in the workplace, it can vary. So the individuals that are victims, sometimes they're affected by the perpetrator coming into their workplace, and they end up getting fired. So having those laws that protect them from discrimination based on domestic violence. And unfortunately, a lot of states don't have that for their employers in place, policies in place. Sometimes they're affected with health issues, hospitalization. So having that time off from work in the workplace is difficult for them sometimes. That's a challenge. Internally, I'm fortunate to be a part of a domestic violence agency. So of course we would have that policy in place. So it was an eye-opening matter to understand that some employers don't even have that, or even know what resources to assist a person that comes to them, or even have a safe place for that person to come to report it, and then being able to navigate them through that process.
Wow. That's interesting that employers don't always have a safe place or even policies in place to support their employees. Let me ask, and I don't know that I've asked this question to any of our previous guests, but when we think about domestic violence, often we think about physical abuse, right? We think about a person who's presenting with bruises and black eyes and wearing long sleeves in 105-degree weather, right? And wearing sunglasses in the dark. But that's not all of what domestic violence is. It is also physical and financial and spiritual abuse, manipulation, coercion, right? And so, what do you see some of that in the workplace as well? Some of those not so visible signs of domestic violence? Do you see any of that? How does that present itself?
So with
Yeah.
the financial abuse component, I've seen where the victim's spouse would take their paycheck every time they got paid, and if they didn't, there would be consequences of not doing so, and so that creates that fear and then anxiety within that individual that's employed. Um, the emotional abuse, just seeing the dynamics of a person when you walk into the workplace, that stuff doesn't stop at the door when they walk into the workplace. So they're carrying those things with them that impacts their work performance, the thought process, their attitude. So everything is still a part of them, whether they're in the workplace or at home. They carry it with them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wanted to correlate this to also a bias issue, right? Because I do a lot of work on unconscious bias, and the reality is that we have created like this unconscious idea of what domestic violence looks like. So just like you just shared, we have this idea. It looks like bruises. It looks like something that you physically see, right? And someone crying in the corner. But as I shared earlier, I was a high performer. So there was one season in the beginning of my situation where there was a change because my supervision did mention to me that they noticed a change in my behavior, which resulted to reprimand. It caused me to a transition in my job where pretty much I lost a position and I had to be transitioned into another role, which again now affected my funds because I was one of the primary breadwinners in the household, and that caused more turmoil in my home. And again, when you are domestic violence, you're dealing with it, you want to like people please, you want to please the person. So now when I did get back into a new role, it was like execution. So now I became a high performer. So if you have someone that's performing at a high level, you have somebody that's getting the awards, they're getting the accolades, they don't look like, you're smiling and it's like, Sergeant Thomas, you are just killing it. You're doing it. You're getting promoted. It doesn't look like you are navigating domestic violence. So just like I tell people in unconscious bias, when you're navigating DE&I, we have to really go through the process of unlearning, right, this false idea or this narrative of what certain things look like, and start relearning the actual differences, right? Learn about financial abuse, emotional abuse, how it looks different. They even talk about spiritual abuse, how people can use religion and spirituality as a way to abuse a partner, and really start learning about these different components so we can recognize the different faces of it, and we can really be supportive and be effective bystanders in the workplace, in the military, when we are supporting those, again, our team members, as well as if we're leaders within an organization. Because again, if we continue to lead by these ideas that we have, we could be missing opportunities to really support those that are around us.
That's good. That's good information. Wow. Let me ask you about leadership. You mentioned leaders, and we talked briefly about employers and the role of employers. What do employers need to be looking for? What do military leaders need to be looking for in order to identify a person who may be experiencing domestic violence? What do they need to look for? And then what should they do to support those that are under their supervision?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that the Pentagon did provide was it was about $1 billion since 2015. They had poured into different services. Like one of the initiatives was Green Dot, and it focused on again bystander prevention, and it equipped pretty much all the organizations within the Department of Defense tools to provide information to, DoD civilians as well as military members on things to look out for. But it starts with the basics, right? Are we taking time as leaders to get to know our team members, right? Because as we're taking time and we're building those professional relationships, when your team members' behaviors start to shift, their performance, their productivity, you notice that. Why? Because you have taken time to get to know them, right? So as you start to notice that and you build those relationships, you'll start to realize that, by building that trust, by building that relationship, that team member might feel comfortable enough to share what they're navigating, and really come to you and talk to you about it. Or again, by you just recognizing those things, you might start to utilize those opportunities to ask those questions. Just like in, the bystander prevention training that we provided, there are different ways to ask those questions. Some people do ask directly. Some people pass it on to someone else and say, hey, this is what I noticed. And maybe they feel more comfortable passing on to someone else. Some people find a way to distract the situation and, call in someone else, maybe an expert to assist with the matter. So it's just finding the best way to address it based off of your maybe behavioral preference or what makes you comfortable. And then also, if you are someone that is maybe a CEO or a decision maker within that organization, start to bring to the attention to your CEO or someone that is can potentially navigate the budget and say, hey, can we potentially bring in some experts or some programming that can come in and really teach our staff and our team members how to be effective bystanders and give us the tools so we can make this something that is we can change the culture to allow our team members to know that we support them and we're here to support them in these initiatives, and then also give them the tools so they know what to do based off of their, again, preference if they do notice that a team member is navigating that. So again, basics of getting to know your team member, providing the resources and the tools, and then of course getting with your HR department to find out what they have available, so they can again have those tools available. Because again, it's always like, you can always say, hey, our HR department has it, go to them. But again, it's just being aware of what's available to you within, again, that organization that you are part of.
That's good.
And another thing is changing the work culture, as Ms. Thomas had said. And then the coalition that we're part of in Virginia, we've moved towards having a trauma-informed space. And that's having an understanding that everybody is impacted by some type of trauma, and how we supervise the people that are under us is having that empathy and understanding that she acted out in this certain way, what's going on, and having those conversations and being human and not having the priorities of the job ahead of a person's issues that they're experiencing. So just having that understanding and creating that trust and that safe space so that person can come to you in confidence and being confidential. Because a lot of people are leery of sharing information. They have those trust issues. And so just making sure that the things are held in confidence and being able to have that time to share and support them, move with them in that process.
Let's talk about that confidentiality piece. We, in order for someone to be comfortable to share, they have to trust, and trust begins, as Aisha said, with building a relationship, right? Building a relationship, knowing who you're dealing with, knowing who that person is. But if I am experiencing domestic violence, I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable sharing with the person who's giving my evaluation, or sharing with even a colleague who, is in relation with others. So then if I'm uncomfortable and I'm a domestic violence victim, where should I be able to go in the workplace? If I'm not comfortable going to my supervisor, where should I go? And where should I expect that confidentiality to take place? Where is that place?
I think having that conversation upon them being hired, letting them know what we have to offer, and they can identify with themselves who they feel is safe, having some type of procedure in place where they can report in confidence outside of the workplace, having those resources available, giving that information to them up front. That way they'll already have that, their bases covered. And then once they proceed throughout their employment, they can find whether or not they can trust the individual.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, even with the way that they navigate reporting within the military for sexual assault survivors, there is like those mandatory reporters. So the thing is that before you even roll out any type of initiative or policy in regards to how you're going to navigate this within your organization, it is really flushing out what that looks like, who are going to be your mandatory reporters, because when it comes to sexual violence, they have something called a pretty much like a mandatory reporter, or a report that is actually like closed and sealed, and one that's automatically open because depending on who you report it to. So they actually have someone that works in what they call a SAPR office. So this is someone designated, a phone number you can call. And if you are a victim of sexual violence, you call that number and you're going to talk to that person. And they're automatically someone that if you report it to them, they're automatically someone that will never share that information. And they ask you, how do you want to navigate this? Do you want to report it where you want it to be open and now there's an investigation? We're going to tell your chain of command and so on. Or do you want it to be a closed case? So they'll still, do it according to that. That I don't like to call people victims, but that survivor. How they want to navigate that. They'll still take them to the hospital, have them go through the whole kit process so they can have the evidence. They'll collect all the data necessary. But again, everything is led by how that person wants to navigate it. And at any point, they can now say, okay, now I want to take it and actually press charges. But of course, they also have identified who those mandatory reporters are, if that is someone in your chain of command. Because again, there are cases where, depending on the role that person plays within an organization, they pretty much should, because of their role, address it and share that information to, the police and share that information too. We have like our police is called the OSI. And because of course, if someone is a CEO, a leader, it's kind of like, I need to set the precedence that I want to make sure that this person is, taken care of. And I set the tone that this is something that I do not want to happen within my organization and team. And it's kind of like you kind of are navigating that, that tight role where it's like, man, I want to keep your secret, but I also want to make sure that you're taken care of. So I think it's also even considering having someone designated to sit in that role. If it's someone in HR or hiring someone on that can be in that seat, that can be like, okay, this is a person that can keep this secret or keep this as a report that is closed. And if that person determines they want to file a report, then they can do so as well.
That's good. That's good. I was thinking two things. I was just thinking about how we define domestic violence, and it's so hard to really sometimes get the support you need when it's not physical abuse, when it's just, it's all the other parts about domestic violence, but not physical abuse. So that was just a thought. But Aisha, you mentioned something earlier, and I'm not sure that I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about it, even though it just came up. You mentioned bystander intervention, and you talked about green dot. Though I'm sure all three of us know what green dot is, right? But can we talk a little bit about bystander intervention and what is that? And what is green dot? What does any of that mean? What is that? Bystander intervention?
Yeah, it's really where basically bystander, like when someone else sees something, right? It could be we've all been in those cases where we have been out and we've seen something and it's like, like maybe you're walking down the street and you see a robbery, or you are just at the grocery store and you see something happening. That's a bystander. So at any point where you see someone being victimized or you just notice something that's happening. So again, that is pretty much a bystander. We can be a bystander at any point where we have noticed or we've identified that something is off here and it might require some type of action. So they have developed programs such as Green Dot. The military has kind of pivoted away from that. Of course, they had that program, I think, for a few years, but essentially that one, it was a great program because it provided you, again, different ways depending on your preference of how you would address something of that sort, right? Because again, you have people that if they see, say, domestic violence happening, they would walk up directly to the person and say, hey, what's going on here? Like, are you, and actually address the situation head on. You had some individuals that would just call the police, or someone that would distract the situation and then handle it, right? Because they might not feel comfortable handling it head on, because maybe they feared for their safety. They might have been with family or loved ones. So it just gave you different options, which was very awesome, because again, a lot of times people don't recognize the uncomfortability of also wondering if I got it wrong. I could assume that someone is being, a quote unquote abused, and they might not. So now it gives you different options of how to navigate if you think or you see or actually witness someone being abused, or you think someone is in a DV type of situation. So that's bystander prevention. What you can do if you see, witness, have an idea that something is happening, where you can give an anonymous tip, where you can actually make a phone call, where you can actually address it right away. So now it also not only provides the organization and the workplace tools, now it's given everyone else around that sees, hears, smells, tastes, any type of your senses. It gives you those different options of how you can also be that support system on this culture of, we are here to support, and we are here to not change, but support that team member who might be facing this.
That's good. That's good. Dietrich, does your agency do any work with bystander intervention or community training on DV?
We don't, but I would love to do that. Right now, we're going to work on prevention because right now I feel like we're just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. In order to get to the front end of the problem, we need to work on the prevention, identifying it, and how to eradicate this issue. Bystander intervention, I think, is very important because a lot of times people don't want to get involved, or it's not their business, and having that in place can save someone's life. So
absolutely. My daughter told me a story. She wanted me to watch a video yesterday, and I said, well, what is it? She said, Mommy, it's so sad, it's gonna make you cry. I'm like, oh Lord, what have you been watching on social media? But it actually was a story of domestic violence involving a child, and the child ended up dying in the home, but the neighbors had heard of the child being abused. At the time of the child's death, they had broken bones, and the doctor's report basically said that the event that killed this child was not the first experience with abuse that the child had had. The trauma was so intense, and I said to my daughter, I said, I'm a social worker. I don't need to see this case. I've seen cases like this before. Please don't re-traumatize me. But the reality is that there were people who could have intervened. We don't think about domestic violence involving and impacting children, but it does. If the adults in the home are in a domestic violence situation, the children are impacted directly, physically, sexually, psychologically. It is all within that type of situation. So I just want to encourage you, if you are a bystander, which means it may not be happening to you, or it may, but you know that abuse is taking place. You hear it, you see the signs. Please intervene. If that means calling the police, or knocking on a door, or distracting someone from the situation, please, there are lots of ways to intervene and be safe. So let me just say that, and be safe. If you're not comfortable and you feel that it's not a safe time, you can just call 911. But lives are at stake. So I just wanted to mention a little bit about bystander intervention. So thank you so much. We talked a bit about, did I miss anything related to that, ladies? Awesome. Thank you so much. We talked a bit about the recommendation for workplace leaders. What advice, just practical advice, would you give to a person who's in a domestic violence situation and yet they have to show up? They have to show up at work. They have to show up in the military. What practical advice can you give to that person, male or female? Dietrich, I'll ask you. Practical advice, just to survive, safety measures.
For employers?
For employers, yes.
So being able to talk with the individual, have a safety plan, because it may not be safe.
I'm sorry, employers, yes, but also I meant employees.
Yeah, have reporting and having a safety plan in place. So having, going to the resources that are able to assist in doing a safety plan. So when they're ready to leave, they have been prepared to step out and make those changes that they need to make.
Talk to me a little bit about safety plan. What is that? What do I need? Is there a packet? Is there a sheet? What is a safety plan?
So a safety plan is different for everyone based on their individual circumstance. So it could involve having a pack bag and giving it to a family member or a friend when they're ready to leave, and having all the important documents in it, such as their birth certificate, an extra set of keys, Social Security card, any important documents that they would need. So once they leave the situation, they'll be prepared to move on without difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Aisha, anything else?
Wow, that is very important to have a plan, but also the aspect of, I know it's easy a lot of times when people say just go, and while yes, that means the safety of yourself, the safety of your children, it's okay, right? And the reason why it's okay, because again, there's a lot of guilt and a lot of things that you probably are navigating, because you're just like, man, that's the typical thing that a lot of individuals navigating domestic violence here, like, just, I don't understand why you just don't leave, right? And there's so many different layers to that. So just that aspect of, it is normal that it might take some time for you to get up and go. It might take some time for you to navigate your safety plan, and you to finally decide to walk away. And again, yes, that is something that we want to encourage you to do, especially because, again, when you have children, again, I always think about my children, and I'm happy to have gotten them out of that situation, because again, you hear it's like the secondhand victims in these scenarios, that unfortunately they're also seeing they're potentially seeing what relationships look like. And now, unconsciously, it's just they're navigating trauma in a totally different way as well. So just my heart goes out to you, especially if you're in a season where you're just, maybe it's taking you longer, or it's taking you time for you to walk away. So build that plan, have that plan, just come up with, there's so many shelters out there. I just watched a great show on Netflix called Made. Powerful. I probably cried throughout the whole thing because I could relate to it so much. And what's beautiful about that show, it showed you domestic violence in so many different ways. It wasn't your typical, you saw someone dealing with emotional abuse. And normally when we see these shows, you see it from a perspective of, typically, again, physical violence, but it was emotional. And I think that it normalized that. So that's the other thing. A lot of times people think like, well, I'm not being hit, I'm not being, again, that unconscious bias. So also take time, because in this show, she also had to learn and navigate her unconscious bias about abuse, because it was like, initially when she was being asked questions, she's like, I'm not being abused though. I don't have any bruises. I'm not being hit. And, the social worker is like, okay. right? So you might need to also go through the process of educating yourself, of learning about the different variations of what abuse looks like. Because again, as you educate yourself, that might also allow you to recognize that, okay, maybe it's something I need to navigate. So educate yourself, create that plan, have those things set up. So, and again, look up and utilize those numbers. There's shelters that are nearby that will really help you as you are transitioning, out of that situation into a new situation that's going to be really beneficial for you and your family. And also, the last thing is, there are situations where the systems are broken. The military has dropped the ball. They just have in, maybe the reprimand that they have given to those perpetrators, but that has nothing of a reflection on you. Just make sure that you're doing your part to heal, to work through the trauma that you have experienced, to go from that, again, that victim side to that survivor side, because you are a survivor.
Thank you so much. That's powerful. So what I heard in terms of advice for survivors: safety planning, meaning have all copies of all of your important papers, your immunizations, your medical records, your children's shot records, immunizations, your marriage certificate, social security card, copies of your driver's license and passport. Make sure you have a copy somewhere, either with someone whom you trust, a person that is solely in your corner, or a PO box or safety deposit box. Make sure that you have the documents that you need. Make sure that you have some money somewhere, a little bit of money, just if nothing else, $20, right? To be able to catch an Uber or cab or Lyft somewhere away. So make sure that you have some cash on hand, even if it's just a little bit. Make sure that you have someone in your circle whom you can call. They know a sign. One of my best friends, when she calls and she hears my voice in a certain way, she knows what that means. It's been a bad day or a great day, right? She knows me well enough to know. You need to have a sign or a code or a verbal signature, or maybe a physical signature, a sign with someone, a word or something, so that person knows that you're in danger. Maybe it's leaving your front porch light on all day, but have a sign with someone who knows what that sign means. So all your documents, your records, some cash, and a safety sign. All right. So safety planning. And then make sure that you have a trusting relationship with someone who understands. Aisha, you talked about taking care of yourself. And I just want to put a plug in here for therapy, counseling with a professional person. There are lots of people who love you and support you, but may not understand the nuances of domestic violence. So make sure that you have a therapist. Yes, there are shelters around. Yes, there are domestic violence agencies like Haven, right, Dietrich? Haven, who are there to support you. But utilize those resources to make sure that you are healthy. Minimize, and I know that this is very difficult, but minimize your guilt as much as you can so that you can be clear to make the best decisions for you and your children. All right. Those are just some hints. Is there anything else that we need to discuss, ladies, this afternoon as it relates to workplace, domestic violence in the workplace and in the military? Anything else? Any advice that you wish to leave our listeners with?
I would just say this last thing, just the reminder that you are not alone. We hear this so much, and sometimes we still find ourselves as those who have navigated this. And I've been there. You feel all alone, like it's just you navigating this, but we're not. So just constantly remind that there are, it might be unfortunate, but there's so many other men and women, and that's the other side of it. There are men that are navigating this as well. Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness. My goodness, for the men out there that are navigating this, we hear you, we see you, we're here to support you. I know society, may not, hear you, or they might make it into a joke or might think it's funny, but we are here with you as well. So for the men out there that are navigating domestic violence, that are suffering in silence, please know we are here with you and we love you as well. You are not alone. So
Absolutely.
please get the help that you need. Don't think that, it's like something that's less of a manhood to say that I am being violated as well in my home. So that's another big one that, just popped in my heart as well. But you aren't alone. And there are survivors out there that are here to support you. We love you, and definitely just get the support that you need. And just really, again, be strategic in how you navigate it. And Dr. K, you hit some great points of, those signals and coming up with a plan. Oh, that's some really, really good stuff. But just remember, you are not alone.
Absolutely.
And
Dietrich, any final words?
Yes, I would say advocacy awareness is very key in identifying domestic violence and what it looks like. And the more we create that atmosphere of awareness, people can be able to really look at their situation, that it's not just a bad relationship, that it actually is domestic violence, and then be able to get that help. And also advocating. So once you have become a survivor and have healed, advocate for changes in laws and policies and procedures so that these things can be spread across the U.S. and that everybody will be on one accord in resolving this issue.
Absolutely. Let me just do a plug. I have to do a plug for those who are in doctoral programs. Listen, there is so much research that has been done. Thank you to those who have done the work. But there's so much research that needs to be done surrounding domestic violence. Dietrich just talked about the need for advocates. Your research can be used to advocate for people who are impacted by domestic violence, intimate partner violence, abuse. We need your research. So I want to encourage those of you who are thinking about doing research in the area of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, or abuse. Please do. There is room for you at the table. As you all know, my research related to domestic violence stems from an incident of domestic violence in my faith community where 2 sisters were killed in one domestic violence incident. That's where my research started, and I'm continuing the work. We need you to do the work. So please don't give up. Please do the research. For those of you who are practicing, who are supporting people who've gone through or who are experiencing domestic violence, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We need you to be on the ground. We need you to be advocating and writing letters to your congressmen and your senators. We need you at all points along the spectrum, from birth to death, for those who are experiencing domestic violence. So I want to thank you as well. Doctoral pursuers, the doctoral degree, it is not merely a degree of intelligence. It is a degree of persistence, and we are here to help you persist. Specifically for those of you who are doing DV work, I just want to, again, thank you for your work. We need more research. So thank you. Ladies, that's my plug. I have to speak to my doctoral pursuers because it's just passionate. It's just a passion for me. I know the importance and the impact of research. So thank you for giving me those few minutes to do that. Dietrich Betts, you have been wonderful. Thank you for your work in our hometown and our home area. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Aisha Thomas, thank you, thank you, thank you for your work with leaders and for your work in the military. You ladies are absolutely awesome. I wish the best for you. Thank you and Godspeed. Thank you, everybody. We will see you again next week. Next week, we're going to talk about domestic violence. And let's see, what's our topic next week? I'm sorry, it just slipped my mind. Next week, we're talking about domestic violence and community resources. So don't miss us. We're going to have some more wonderful guests to talk about domestic violence advocacy. And we're also talking about domestic violence in teen and young adult relationships. So you don't want to miss next week. Until then, take care, be safe, and be well. I'll see you soon. It's Dr. Kesslin. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.